Hi people and hello my Chili Con Carnage crew, it's Chili here from Live Listen Race and I'm the man who produces Iron for My Eyes doing a 5-minute review on P.O.D's latest album, Veritas. Now if you are familiar with the new metal scene then you should be very familiar with the band P.O.D. After all, when it comes to this genre, they were one of these artists that really broke through on a big level with their album Satellite and of course Boom, which, just absolutely blew up, as well as of course Youth of the Nation. But this wasn't their first album, because dating back to 1994 they released their first album, Snuff the Punk. That album actually celebrated its 30th anniversary only a few months ago, and I've got to say, I had never listened to that album until Veritas came out, because you know what, I saved these two records as stark comparisons to compare how far the band have gone, and oh boy, have they gone far. Now with Veritas, there were quite a few singles that were released for the upcoming album, and one of the first ones that really caught my attention, of course, as with many people, would be the first song, Drop, which featured Randy Blythe. That is a massive name as far as the metal community goes. I was intrigued as to how this would sound when I of course saw it and played it for the very first time, but oh my gosh, I was just so disappointed when I heard it, because there is just so little of Randy Blythe's vocals on here that I even question if Randy Blythe should have even had the mention in the track title. It's truly a weird song because it's this massive build up, it starts going somewhere, and then when it gets down to it, it just stops, it breaks down, and nothing happens. It unfortunately goes nowhere, and this song just could have done something, especially if it featured a bit more Randy Blythe, but unfortunately he just doesn't do much. If anything, I think he starts screaming burn in the background, which makes me wonder if the band just walked past him one day and asked him the question, hey, what's the name of your first band? And then recorded that and used his vocals on there. It was certainly a letdown, and it's unfortunately the first song from the record. We're not off to a very good start, but that's how it is. One of the other singles from this record was Afraid to Die, which features Tatiana from Ginger, and I gotta say, she has one powerful voice, which, yeah, it's alright on this effort here, but as far as the song goes, I'm not into it. I just don't know what to say about Afraid to Die. Nothing about it really moved me, it never got my attention, and to be honest, I kind of forgot that it exists on the record. I just don't know how to say it, but all these singles so far have been pretty weak. It's a bit unfortunate because I feel like if they really got the band in, they could have done a lot more heavier stuff, but I feel like P.O.D might have been holding them back from, doing their style of music and influencing it within their sound, because that would have been an intriguing effort by both bands. Seems like squandered potential, I guess, when you're looking over it. Now, I'm not going to hate on every single single that came out, even though I probably could, but for me, Lay Me Down, Rue's song was a pretty solid effort. I liked this single, I thought it was catchy, it certainly had moments that really caught my attention, and it did stay with me throughout the runtime, which is especially impressive considering, well, what I will be discussing a little bit later on. But yeah, I thought Lay Me Down, Rue's song was certainly one of the more stronger efforts on this record, and, well, one of the better singles that was released from it too. Now, when I look over the history of P.O.D, I find there are certainly a fair few interesting aspects from their long and sordid career. I mean, this group has been around, as I've mentioned, for 30 plus years, and they're still writing music. Although this is the first album not to feature their original drummer, so now they are performing as a trio kind of act, and they've got a touring musician with them. As mentioned before, I had not listened to Snuff the Punk, and I listened to it the same day that Veritas came out. And I've got to say, I knew that they were a Christian band, but oh my gosh, do they make it very, very obvious on that record. I swear half the tracks are just devoted to God and talking about how he's on their side. The band would never hide in this aspect of their life, and of course this would also play through on several other albums, especially when you go through the fundamentals of Southtown. In regards to that record, I did find it quite interesting, but it does sound very dated. It's not a bad effort by the band, but of course it's very early on stages, very raw, and while it certainly contained a lot more funk elements that were not found throughout the rest of the band's career, I did enjoy it for its runtime. Now, one of the other aspects that I find very intriguing about this band is, well, they're a band with a lot of firsts throughout their career. I mean, as far as Christian metal bands go, this has to be perhaps one of the most metal Christian bands around for its era. When you look back at 1994 and Snuff the Punk, it has a very heavy tone to it. So it's an interesting one when you're looking at it from this kind of perspective. On the flip side, there is an album that only came out in 2015 called The Awakening. I discovered this album only a couple of years ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a very solid record from start start to finish, and I never really wanted to skip any tracks on its run through. And the most interesting aspect about this record is that it's a concept album. This has to be the first amongst any new metal band, because I can't think of any other new metal band doing concept albums. It's just not in their field, of course, and it's expected in more prog rock territories, but it's not like it doesn't exist outside of those realms. But as far as new metal goes, yeah, I did not expect anything like this. And of course, to be blown away by the efforts, solid work there. Now we go back to Veritas to talk about some of the other tracks that are on offer here. And for me, if you ignore the singles that the band released, there are a lot of really good tracks in between these songs. The first one that really got my attention was I Got That, which I thought was a solid rocking tune that was just hard hitting, and of course Dead Right, which sounds a bit like Rage Against the Machine to a degree, or maybe even Mammal. There were certainly some other songs on here that I found quite intriguing, such as Breaking or This Is My Life, and of course the band does come across as a bit polished rock in these efforts, maybe even a bit contrived, but I still enjoyed it for most of the runtime that I was listening to this record. As for I Won't Bow Down, well, it's the same as many of the other singles on here. It wasn't exactly a strong track for me, and I'm not exactly skipping it on a playthrough, but I'm not exactly enjoying it either. Now recently I took part of a panel where we talked about this album a bit more in depth on Is It That Bad, so go check out Chill Dude on the Couch and his channel where we can go in depth on it. But as far as this album goes, I feel like it's a bit middle of the road, perhaps a little bit pedestrian, and perhaps the band have lost a bit of their edge. Maybe it's because of the loss of the drummer from their band and they've lost a bit of themselves with that, but I just feel that this record could have been a lot better, and it's just way too basic in a lot of areas. Now P.O.D aren't exactly known for reinventing the wheel with their type of music, mostly incorporates a lot of other elements that were around at the time, but with this record it does just seem like it's a very generic ripoff of a lot of metalcore bands around about this stage of the musical world. I don't hate the album, but I don't exactly find it thrilling either. Would I get rid of this album altogether? Perhaps not, but it's not exactly high up amongst the P.O.D records. But then again, when you're looking over P.O.D's catalogues, they do have a fair bit of hit and miss records. Unfortunately, most of the miss records are going to be later on in their career, and this might be one of those records that just skims through above that line. Overall, I would give this album a score of 6 million chilies on the spicy scale, with my favourite tracks being I Got That, Dead Right, and This Is My Life. Yeah, this album is not a strong effort by the band, and the singles that were released were just terrible choices by whoever decided to put them out there. I would argue that the songs that I picked for my favourites should have been released as singles instead, because they feel more captivating compared to some of these other ones. And as for the guest spots, make sure they do something next time if you're going to include them. But anyway, listen to this album yourself, make up your own decision, and of course, comment below and tell me your thoughts, because I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this record. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content, because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.